going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to examine an issue of the X-Men. Today, I am examining X-Men issue 53. We have two stories in this issue. The first story is written by Arnold Drake with penciling by Barry Smith, which might not be a name that you recognize. This is Barry Windsor Smith, who later had a pretty lengthy run on Conan the Barbarian in the 70s. As far as the X-Men goes, he was the penciler on the issue Life Death with Forge and Storm in the 80s. Pretty well-known penciler, but this is pretty early in his career. His style hasn't really come into its own yet. I have to say, I am not a fan of what he's doing here. This looks like he's really trying to be Jack Kirby light, and it doesn't look right. I don't really care for the style here. I love Jack Kirby's art, and there are plenty of people nowadays who will do something where they're trying to mimic the energy and the form of what Jack Kirby was doing back in the 60s, but I don't like that here. And maybe it's because I'm familiar with Barry Windsor Smith's style, and I like that style quite a bit, and he hasn't quite found his way to that style yet. So wasn't crazy about the art here. And then also we have inking by Michael D., a name that I am unfamiliar with. I didn't look him up to see what else he's done. I don't think we've seen him on any of the X-Men books yet. And lettering by Herb Cooper. And then the backup story here, which is the conclusion of the Origins of the Beast. This is written by Arnold Drake with penciling by Werner Roth, inking by John Tartaglione, and lettering by Jean Simek Izzo. This is Artie Simek's daughter. I had no idea that he had a daughter. I had no idea that she worked in comics. I had no idea Artie Simek was old enough to have had a daughter working in comics around this time. I thought he was a little younger than that, but I was wrong. So anyway, this issue is the absolute worst. This feels like something that Roy Thomas would have done in the middle of the Factor 3 storyline to draw that out for another month. Basically, the X-Men are in the basement of the mansion, and Jean Grey wants to play around with Professor Xavier's machines, and she starts acting very odd. That's makes me a little uncomfortable. So anyway, somehow Jean having a sexual moment here somehow releases Blastar, or I guess I should say Blastar, since it's got two A's there, from the negative zone. He is waxing poetic about how he's trapped in a negative zone, but also there's no worthy adversaries for him to fight. And then somehow Professor X's machine, I'm not even sure what the desired effect here is, what the X-Men were trying to accomplish with this thing, but apparently Jean was the only one who could test this machine out, and she somehow is able to summon Blastar into the basement of the mansion, and then for the entire issue, the X-Men fight Blastar, and then he gets sent back to the negative zone. And that's it. There's really nothing that happens in this issue. I don't know if Arnold Drake was just trying to kill time so that he could figure out what to do for the next storyline. I peeked ahead. He is going to be writing the next story, which I don't remember much about it. I do know it introduces another character, but really this feels like an issue that Roy Thomas did, where he's just trying to kill time until he gets put on another book that he's more interested in. This does not feel like it's written by the same guy who did the Mesmero storyline. With everything I didn't like about that story and how it wrapped up, that story is 100 times better than this one. This is just a 15-page fight scene. That's all it is. There's not much to talk about here. I never thought that I would be excited to get to the backup story in one of these X-Men issues. And let's be honest, that story isn't great. It wraps up what it says is the 5-part Origins of the Beast, and I guess they're counting the issue that talked about the Beast's powers and really wasn't even about that. It was about the Beast enjoying reading philosophy and stuff like that, because I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I don't think this is the 5th issue of the Origins of the Beast. If you count the one that talks about him reading Aristotle and Shakespeare and stuff, there's that issue. There's one issue where his dad gets covered in nuclear radiation before Beast is born, and then there's an issue where we first see him and he's playing football, and then we briefly see the Conquistador, and then there was the previous issue where Conquistador is able to convince this Beast, hey, you need to steal a nuclear thing, and then there's this issue. So that is 5 issues, but I wasn't really counting the one where he says he likes to read Shakespeare as part of the origins of the Beast. But anyway, the X-Men, they bust in, and they're able to help Beast fight all of the Conquistador's people. The Conquistador is able to hook up the nuclear reactor that Beast stole in the previous issue, and then Professor X was somehow able to use his telepathy to jam the machine so that it blows up the Conquistador. So Professor X committed murder, just straight up murdered this guy. Beast was able to rescue his parents, and then in one panel we have Professor X saying that he put a radio blanket over the entire town so that nobody remembers that the Beast has mutant abilities. I guess that means that the video footage of Beast using his powers in the football game has been deleted. Radio blanket makes it sound like it's a mechanical thing that they did, but I feel like more people than just what was in that town would have watched that football game. I don't remember the actual numbers that they said, but it was a high number. It was like over 1 million people had watched that football game, and how do you know that someone outside of that town didn't watch it? I don't know, but basically they want to have Beast have a secret identity with the X-Men, so they're just throwing it under the rug really quickly. I knew they would. This doesn't explain if Beast's parents have been mind-wiped. We know that Iceman's parents were mind-wiped whenever he joined the X-Men. I'm assuming that Beast's parents were as well, but this doesn't actually specify if they remember. Beast says, okay, nobody remembers that I have mutant abilities, but he doesn't say if his parents remember, and if he does know that, he seems awfully cheery thinking about his parents having their memories wiped, so that's a little weird. Not much to talk about here. Iceman does say that it was a mistake letting women vote. That's a little weird. I guess he's joking, but it's not a very funny joke, and this is in that time period where the girls, the female characters, the lady characters, if you will, at Marvel Comics, that they weren't treated very well, and so a lot of times in the series, if you remember the issue with Meccano, Cyclops wanted Jean to stay back because she might get hurt whenever they go and fight this guy who basically can just jump really high, and so the characters aren't treated very well. They're basically treated like they don't matter, and like, stay back, let's let the men go forward and do the superheroing, and you see a little bit of that here. Jean is arguing with Iceman, hey, don't tell me to stay back, I can probably help, and then Iceman's like, oh, fine, whatever, lady. It's just weird. I can't wait for that to be less of a problem in this series, and this is the first time it's really been addressed verbally, because before they would say, like, you know, Jean, stay back, it's too dangerous, but then they wouldn't really bring up how awful and sexist that was in the comic, and this is bringing it up, and then Iceman arguing with her just makes it worse. It's really awful. Just, you absolutely love to see Iceman as a sexist, don't you? So that's it. Not a whole lot to talk about here. The next issue is going to be a storyline, a multi-part story introducing the Living Pharaoh. That might not sound great to you, but I know that it's better than this issue. I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I remember it's a little better than what we get here. So I'm willing to give Arnold Drake a pass on this one because this is about as good as most of Roy Thomas's run on the book, and Arnold Drake did provide a pretty good storyline with Mesmero and the introduction of Polaris, who, by the way, where is she? She's not here, and I thought she basically joined the X-Men at the end of the previous issue. Iceman had been injured because of this plane that Cyclops had, and then at the end of the issue, Polaris is like, okay, Nurse Lorna is here, you know, again, being a little sexist here, and then she's nowhere to be seen here. They don't even mention her. This really feels like it was a fill-in issue that they just grabbed at the last minute to give the later storyline a little bit more time to be concluded, and that doesn't seem likely because this is written by Arnold Drake. So I have no idea what's going on here. I don't know if we're going to see Lorna again in the next storyline, if they're going to explain where she was here. Probably not, but that was a little odd. So anyway, with that being said, let's consider this issue examined.